There's never been a time in your life, other than protecting yourself from a potential attacker, that you choosing to be masculine has worked out better for you than you choosing to be feminine. It's never a time that when you choose masculinity, that it has a better outcome with men than you choosing femininity. You have to harness your superpower. Your feminine nature is a superpower. Your soft girl energy is a superpower. Being soft is actually a strong woman. Weak women are the ones that try to act like they're strong when they're really not. Because if you masculine women want to be men, y'all would be the weakest in the street. Can't push the goddamn couch up the stairs. Y'all hoes can't change the oil. Y'all can't goddamn beat nobody ass out here. So if women were actually trying to be men, they would be the weakest in the world. So stop doing that and harness your superpowers, because if you learned how to shut up, be soft, be submissive, be feminine, you can get just about everything you wanted from a man.
Okay, so I kind of wanted to weigh in on this as well. So I've experienced both sides of this coin. When I was younger, I had a very rough upbringing, being like raised in the foster care system and just very much in survival mode, very much in fight or flight, very much in my tomboy era, because I was placed in a lot of situations where I had to become that. I was always in survival mode. So my interaction with other people, including, opposite sex, male species, was that I just didn't have time. It's like, what do you want? What are your intentions? Things like that. And even with women, it was the same thing. So with that, as I got older, I start to see how things begin to change for me. Once I start to soften up more, once I start going to therapy, once I start realizing I don't have to do all that. And it wasn't even coming from this whole femininity era. It was just more of, how people say, been there, done that, with the kids who go party when they're young, when everyone else is partying in adulthood. They were like, I've been doing that. It wasn't so much that, but it was just a level of maturity. It's like, come on, So I just reached a point in my life where I was just like, I was spiritually exhausted of always having to be in fight mode. I remember when I used to say, people used to admire, oh, you're so strong. Once they hear my story, they're like, oh my God, you're so strong. You've been through so much, all this other stuff, blah, 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 blah. Wow, you have a testimony, all this stuff. But all I can think of is, I don't want to be strong. I don't want to be a strong, independent woman. I just want to be a woman. I just want to be able to breathe. I just want to be able to smile. I want to be able to flourish. I want to be able to dance amongst the flowers type of thing. I don't want to have to always be setting boundaries, fighting for my rights, fighting to be heard, fighting to be respected, fighting to earn my place, fighting to get by. And that was just a cycle that I was like, you know what? Enough of this. When you're adult, what I love about adulthood is you have the chance to literally choose what goes on in your life. And if you don't like it, get rid of it. If it's not working for you, get rid of it. So that's what I decided to do. So although that man's approach was a bit something, I don't know what the word is, but it was a lot of energy behind that post. I will say he's not wrong, because I said this in another video on my podcast YouTube. But I was pretty much saying, in Purple Pill Pretty, if y'all want to know that. But long story short, I was saying I noticed that when I was staying in relationships that I feel like I didn't deserve the treatment that I was getting. Instead of leaving, instead of being feminine, I thought I was a strong woman and that didn't take anything, that knew her worth, when I was like, oh no, you're not going to treat me this way. You're not going to do me this way. I don't know who you talking to, but I am not the one. When I was like that, it didn't stop. Because it's you can do all of this, But if you don't take action, oh, I'm gonna leave, then why should they respect you? Because you're not giving them nothing to respect, because it seems like you're just all talk. It seems like you just like the monologue of it, right? So I really started thinking about that, and I was like, it's not lining up. And what's crazy was I didn't always start off aggressive. I had it in my life, but it seemed like I started off very feminine at first, very, just traditional. But I entered the dating world, and I'm not even going to blame the dating world, or I'm going to blame men. But it was just, I had to learn a lot of things in life, and I had to learn what I want. I had to learn what I want, what it actually looked like versus what I was entertaining. And with that being said, when I looked at that, as I began to experience heartbreak, then I just began to get more, I must protect, because that's what survival is. It's a feeling that you have to protect yourself. It's a feeling that you're up against something. It's a feeling that is just all like, no. When you feel safe, when you feel secure, when you feel like your heart and you as an overall woman is taken care of, it's crazy how calm you will be. So that should have already been a red flag to me of the situations that I was in any situation, even outside of romantically. But I'll say this. Once I began to look at that, I began to change a lot of things. And I began to evaluate. When I was deep in the church, I read the Bible fairly well. And I used to be one of those people, I would watch all the reenacted Bible stories and things like that. And one of my all-time favorite was Esther. And we don't talk about Esther not a lot, especially in these conversations, because Esther was literally the conversation that we're having about modern woman and traditional and all that. Well, let me say this. So there was a Queen Vashti, right? So there was Queen Vashti, and back then you cannot approach a man, even if you were the queen. You couldn't just run up to the king and be like, he was handling other affairs and things like that. Back then you weren't allowed to kind of just deny especially the king, deny. And he was put at a point where they were supposed to go to war, blah, 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 blah. He was having a banquet in front of all these people, including other nations and all this other stuff. And he summoned his wife. His wife didn't agree with what was going on, how he was handling things. They had a previous argument. So instead of going and joining the banquet as, he called, she said no. And what that translated to the other men is like, wow, how are you supposed to run us? And you can't even have your kingdom under control. Your own queen, your wife defies you. So they were like, you either penalize her or else, because even though he was the king, his reputation mattered, because back then that's how people respected that king. And he pretty much was like, fine, I'm looking for a new wife. Blah, blah, blah. There's a whole thing of Jews and Gentiles and all type of, things going on there. But I'll say this. He ends up getting another wife. This wife is a God-fearing wife, and her name is Hadassah. And that is actually important, because her name wasn't Esther. From what I understand, it was Hadassah, but she was a Jew portraying to be a Gentile at that time. Don't quote me on this, all you Bible thumpers, yeah, whatever. But just the gist of the story. Long story short, he took them through all these mental hoops and all these things like that. And it pretty much, she passed all the tests. And I'll get into that in a whole different video, because I love that story. So it's not going to be the last time I talk about it. But she had a very pressing issue. Her people were in danger. The Jews, there was pretty much like a purge day released where the Jews were able to be attacked and stuff like that. And he didn't know she was a Jew. She couldn't just approach him. She couldn't run up to him. And it was a very pressing matter. So So she had an idea because she, like I said, she couldn't just bust in his meetings and stuff like that. So she had an idea of how to approach him. She invited him out to dinner or a banquet, and she pretty much catered to him. She nurtured him. She fed him. She was very alluring. She was very feminine. She was very just welcoming in all the qualities that men say that they like in a woman. And from there, she was able to approach him, and she let him know, well, look, this is what happened. And even though because she was asking for him to abolish a law that pretty much allowed that purge. And keep in mind, Vashti didn't agree with how the king was handling things. So it wasn't just her being stubborn. She didn't agree, but it was the approach. The approach was disrespectful. And she waited until he was in front of millions of people that he ruled over to be like, no. Instead of handling it in private. In this one, Esther or Hadassah, she's like catering to him. She's, just telling him what a great king he is and all this other stuff. So if you look at it, Vashti, I guess, would equal this whole modern woman concept that everyone's saying, like, oh, women rule the world, all this other stuff. But then Esther Hadassah would be the traditional, and I'm saying that to say this. And now this is where the name comes into play, because I absolutely adore her name. From what I understand, in a very loose translation, her original name, Hadassah, is sweet aroma to God. And to me, that kind of explains femininity. It's not our anger. It's not our, oh hell no. It's not none of that moves mountains. It's the grace. It's the nourishment. First of all, I love watching like older movies and, like periodic time movies, because you'll learn back in the day when men were at war and they couldn't agree, like two kingdoms couldn't agree, they'll send a woman to talk. People forget women are the voice of reason, or femininity is the voice of reason, while masculinity is the voice of knowledge. So we both have something to give each other. But when it comes down to that, if someone's yelling at me, if someone's cursing at me, I don't care for what they have to say. Anytime I hear disrespect, my ears are immediately closed, because in my head, feminine or not, I'm like, who are you talking to? Why are you addressing me like that? I'm more so much in offensive mode that I'm not hearing anything you have to say at all. Bringing all of that full circle, it taught me a lesson. And even just going to therapy, just hearing, I don't have to yell to communicate my boundaries. I don't have to do all this to say and stand up for myself. It's simply, hey, I don't like this. This is something that I'm not okay with. And, blah, blah, blah. From there, if it's crossed, and especially if I'm being reasonable, you still have to be reasonable with your request. Everyone does. But if you are being reasonable and you are setting a boundary, especially there's a way to communicate to someone. It's like, look, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not raising my voice. I'm not saying things out of line. I'm not saying it in attacking you manner. In fact, let me start with me sentences and I sentences. As for me, I don't feel comfortable when this happens. As for me, I don't really like when this happens, and this is just not the energy I would like to be around. It's not welcoming to me, blah, 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 blah. However you communicate that. Just as a human being, it's not men versus women. People in general are a lot easier to hear you out instead of being aggressive and being combative. So now understanding the history of women, we all hear about the oppression, we all hear about that, but at the same time, men used to fight wars, used to chop off heads. You can't just approach somebody's father and be like, oh, I want to marry your wife. In some countries, they have a dowry where you have to pay this price to the family, and you have to show honor and leadership and all this stuff just to obtain a wife. So with that, it's like, if we remember our worth in that area, then you understand those women weren't yelling. They weren't doing all of this. They weren't being, I don't need this and I don't need that. Back then, they would determine, the family, the father would determine, you know what, I don't think that you're suitable for my daughter. And not just anybody was allowed and granted a wife. You know, a wife was like, even when people wanted to make peace in war, yes, it's business and stuff like that, but when people wanted to make peace outside of just sending a woman, they would offer their daughter's hand in marriage, you know, just as a form of respect and a truce, you know, and that brought peace. So now understanding that, also understanding the male role in things and how that came to play, it calms all of this him versus her, man versus woman, alpha male, red pill, all this other stuff. You'll learn that, and we always say, what is a man's role in your life? To provide, protect, to lead, right? And a woman is to nurture, to comfort and support and all this other stuff. Well, those women, you can't just touch their women. You can't just, you know, like their women didn't go without, you know, those women were protected. Those women were provided for. And with that, it's like when a man does have those leadership skills, he was able to go out into the world and make those decisions while the woman is at home, taking care of the household, taking care of the children, things like that. And even when he made the decisions, it's not saying that the women didn't have a voice. But you may see things in the 50s, but what they're not talking about is sometimes when the man doesn't quite know what to do, even though he has all that logic, some men are smart enough to listen to the voice of wisdom because we're close to spirit, we're close to God when we're operating in our true form. So with that, it's just all like, you know what? Let me speak to the elders of the family. Most of the time, the elders were the grandmothers and things like that. And when they spoke, it was like women were also considered oracles. So we're losing all of this value in each other, the value in the men and the value in women. So it's not that a man must pay and a woman needs to shut up. I think that's where we're getting all of this wrong. We just need to learn to play our role because we're not the same, but we are equal in a way. And I might not be equal in a way that a man is equal to lifting couches and protecting. But when I'm in my nurturing energy, when I am in my supportive energy, just being the woman in the background to pray and intercede while that man is going through war. Every time he leaves that door, he's going through war and he's going through all type of danger and things. Now having a husband understanding that a man will literally lay his life down to protect his family, I understand why they're not willing to just give that to any woman. You have to earn that too. Because it's all like, is this woman worth dying for? I thought of that. So while he's out in the world, be in the home protecting as far as spiritually, be in the home praying. Keep him covered, you know? And then it's just all like, he needs that strength, so nourish him. It's very simple. It's not so much of traditional this, but it's just all like, in order to do the providing and stuff like that, he needs sleep, he needs food, he needs this, and he may not have times to do all that. And I know things are a little mixed and different nowadays, but which brings me to my next point. Part of me being able to just wake up as a woman and recalibrate my mind when it comes to dating is you have to be able to listen. Growing up with a lot of like male cousins and things like that, I was able to hear certain conversations because I was either the only girl in the family or the baby, whatever. And I was able to hear them talk a lot more loosely because they weren't changing their conversations just because I was around. And sometimes they'll do things that I didn't like, you know, burp and do it. And I'm like, but I seen other side of men are growing men. And I heard a lot about their mindset. So after a while, I kept bumping into the wall. I came across Kevin Samuels. I know. I came across Andrew Tate. I know. And I came across Red Pill. I know. But you can always even learn from the mouth of a donkey. Never underestimate anyone. If you have an ear, you could always hear someone for what they're saying. Take it with a grain of salt. So I started to listen, and although some of the channels I was like, who hurt you? Like, you're clearly hurt, you're clearly upset. It's still valid to hear their plight and how they felt. And I was like, oh, I get it. Oh, I see how us as women, we've been arrogant. Oh, wow. Yes, it's like I heard so many things, and some of the things I couldn't argue with. How they say how at a young age, women, we are blessed with beauty and this kind of halo and just special aura effect, right? Where we get a lot of things handed to us. And because of chivalry, while we say chivalry is dead, because of chivalry, we still get awarded certain things just because of the strength that we're women. And with men, they kind of have to earn their value when they get older. So I was like, I could actually see that. I'm not so deep in my ego where I can't see that. And then I also heard how they're just like, yeah, they act entitled once they do get it, where it's just like how they said it's like a lot of, when it comes to sex or whatever, men hold the keys to marriage, women hold the keys to sex, right? We're all grown. But it's all like women get it when they want it, men get it when they can. And it's just all like, I thought of that. And I was like, because women are the ones that give permission for the most part. Men do too, but I'm saying but outside of that, they start saying yeah, and then they act like they're entitled to all our money and this is not gonna, but it's all like, if you had a pile of money and riches and you also were willing and know that you have to lay your life down for someone, are you just gonna give that to anyone just off the strength that there's somebody? So this got my gears going, and I was just like, all right, somebody may have hurt these people, but hit dog still gonna holler, So after that, I started looking deeper into things, and I was just like, well, women, we overlook this sometimes, because the sad part is, it's just like we've taught men that they can't feel, they can't express themselves. It's just like, do your job, pay for this, provide for this, protect for this, and you better, and if not, you're not a man. But I noticed in the same conversations, well, if you don't do this, if you don't cook and clean and all this other stuff, you're not a woman. Y'all, I already know, majority of people either not gonna like this video, gonna argue in the comments, say all this other stuff. But let's be honest, some of the stuff they're saying is not like that much out the ballpark. Some of the stuff they're saying, regardless of the delivery, has some solidarity to it. It has some validation in it, So I thought about that, and then it's just like red pill, but then you have what they call blue pill, where it's just like they call men simps and stuff. So it's like, what's the middle ground? What's being knowledgeable in men and women knowing their worth, but also, not being he-man, woman-hating club and vice versa. Like, I don't need a man, a feminist this, feminist that. Purple pill. That's when I created Purple Pill. It started off as Purple Pill Perspectives, but then I learned that somebody else had that. So I was like, okay, cool, no worries. Purple Pill, pretty though. And it's not a channel where I'm going to sit there and be like, ladies, and be delusional. This is our soft era. This is how we become feminine. This is how you attract and manifest. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I wasn't, I didn't take that feminist, that strong, independent, you don't need blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to say that I wasn't fed that same lie. But what I am going to say is, my channel is not for the people that act like they are perfect and they always had it together. My channel is for the people that's trying to get it together. My channel is for the people that is ready to have a conversation. My channel is for the people that we're just going to go ahead and call the elephant out in the room. And we're going to come up with a strategy, or we're going to come up with a game plan, our bullet points, our tips, our advice, whatever the case is. And for all those people, oh, you can't. My thing is, people's like, oh, well, you used to and all this other stuff. Okay, people don't change. I'm supposed to just stay in Delululand my whole life because I was in Delulu once before. Like, okay, people grow, people evolve, people change. So that's what this channel is for. Exactly that. So I want to add this last point before I close out this video. In my observation, outside of men versus women, we used to think that it was a cultural thing, like it's the black culture attacking each other, but I'm starting to see it on a whole level where they're right. They're talking about Western women in the West. It is a Western thing. And maybe in other places, but I haven't seen it in other places, but I've seen other races in the West say the same thing, like, yeah, women this, and I'm seeing the women say, well, men this. So with that, it's just like, let's learn to respect each other. Let's both take accountability, and let's also learn how to let go of the past, heal, and move on and do better. Because at the end of the day, it's not like we're going to keep bickering, arguing. It's all like, the sky's blue, the sky's purple when it comes to men and women. Or we're just going to be like, all right, what's the solution? Because I'm tired of talking about the problems. And that's the thing. We get so much of a thrill just speaking our truth and talking our problems, because on both ends, we feel like, oh, I haven't been able to speak my truth. On both ends in some ways. Women didn't have a voice back in the day. Men were taught that they were not supposed to express their feelings. So we both feel unheard. We both feel overlooked. We both feel unappreciated. But let's meet in the middle.